I want to make one thing clear, and that is that I do not want to discourage anyone from playing the game or enjoying the game. That is not what I'm trying to do with this video. And while I will be talking about the issues I have with the game, and especially the gameplay of Sparking Zero, it's not really about that. What I'm more trying to focus on is the engagement of the community with the game and how we criticize the game. So what I'm trying to do with this video is demonstrate why I personally think we are viewing how to improve this game through the wrong lens. Now, to understand what effective and constructive criticism is, we have to establish what is a good game. Any game, in my opinion, is trying to do something. It has a creative vision, right? You could argue for Sparking Zero, the creative vision is to make a game. This is a very simplistic, almost reductionist view of what the developers probably envisioned for Sparking Zero, but their vision was very likely to make a Dragon Ball game where you feel like you're in the anime, where you feel like you're battling Dragon Ball characters. So in turn, any criticism towards the game should aim to make the game achieve its creative vision that, well, the developers have well envisioned for the game, which is to make it, this fast, um, high stakes, uh, sensationalist, epic, cool, fun fighting game. We as a community are not really doing that. I mean, yeah, there's that documents from those like more quote unquote competitive players on how to improve the game, and I'm gonna elaborate on why I use quotation marks there just in a second, but let's take a step back for a second. So I think I have to give a little disclaimer. Um, I do not like Sparking Zero as a game. I think the issues it has renders it incomplete to the extent that I would not, there are a lot of people call Sparking Zero a masterpiece, there are a lot of people call it amazing. I personally would not even say it's a good game. Now, that is just my opinion. That is completely subjective. But I think almost everyone would agree that there are very, very big issues with the gameplay. Now, obviously, this is where the opinions diverge, because for some people, those issues are either not that big of a deal, or they are. Uh, I mean, I would say for most they are present. So I think the biggest divergence is how much it detracts from their personal enjoyment of the game. But the point being, there are very big flaws with the game, and I would even argue that the game is fundamentally broken. The game doesn't work. Um, there are quite a few examples of this. One being the Vanish Wars. I mean, everyone hates Vanish Wars. Nobody wants to be in a Vanish War. Like, it completely disrupts the flow of combat. It happens too frequently, and it can happen too frequently. Now, what I mean by this is that essentially you have my point being is you have this one gameplay mechanic that in and of itself already does not serve the game well, but when you combine it with the other gameplay mechanics, when you view the gameplay as a whole, the mechanics also don't interact well with each other, because it's not just that vanish wars exist. The problem is that it detracts from the gameplay experience, and it hinders the game's potential to achieve what the developers wanted to achieve, which is a very fast, like, which is a game where you feel like you're playing an episode of Dragon Ball. I mean, maybe I'm crazy, but to me, Dragon Ball is all about, laying hands on people and shooting big key blasts and beams at other opponents, right? If you have something like Vanish Wars, that hinders that vision from becoming true. Why? Because you have this state of the game, which is this Vanish War. I mean, I think everyone agrees on this. Like, no one wants to be in a Vanish War. Everyone universally probably agrees, like, they have to fix that. The problem is, you are consciously or subconsciously playing in a way to avoid Vanish Wars as much as possible. And if that's not the case, then you will always get into Vanish Wars, which will just frustrate you and basically just mess up your whole gameplay experience. Now, you have other things such as super counters being way too easy. I played a lot of BT3. I think BT3 is a much better game in every single aspect than Sparking Zero is. And for those who don't know, in BT3, I'm just gonna call it a super counter, even though in BT3 it used to be called a Z counter. I'm just gonna call it a super counter for simplicity's sake. When you First of all, the window to get a super counter in is much shorter in BT3. I mean, I might be wrong. Correct me in the comments, but I think it's 1 frame. It might be 2, but in Sparking Zero, I think it's like 4 or 5, which does not seem like a big difference, but it really, really is. Coupled with the fact that in BT3 there was a penalty for if you press the super counter input, but you fail, you can't push it. I mean, you can press the input, but you can't get a super counter in for, like, I think a second and a half, something like that. And there's no such system in Sparking Zero. And what does this cause? This causes this defensive option to be way too strong. And I mean, I think we can all agree, like, when we think of Dragon Ball, we do not think of defense. And that's not to say that super counter is a bad mechanic or that defensive options should be disincentivized. Of course not. But the mechanic is not balanced well in a it does not fit the gameplay and what the game is supposed to be, really. And then you have a myriad of other issues, like input issues, like inputs just being eaten or the buffer system acting up. Then you have a big problem with some supers being just way too strong and spammable. I mean, how often have you heard lightning surprise attack by that old pervert? And this is where the problem, in my opinion, sort of arises, and that is that a lot of people will say, oh, well, it's just a casual game. And I see that very often, like, as if it's some sort of justification for the game's flaws. Again, to me, those flaws are a deal breaker. They don't have to be for you, but we all kind of acknowledge they exist, these flaws, and to say that it's on the community, it's on the player to sort of not engage in to not engage with the game as the game is designed, because the game does not incentivize you to not play like that. It does not disincentivize you to spam supers. It does not disincentivize you to rage quit. It does not disincentivize you to use like broken skills. It does not disincentivize you to use like the most broken characters. So how is it like the community's fault or like the players' fault for that? It doesn't make any sense. I mean, if I don't know if you guys have seen the whole debacle with the finals of this big Sparking Zero tournament. Basically, if you're not caught up to speed, there was a big tournament for Sparking Zero. I think organized by Bandai Namco themselves, or like sponsored by them. I'm not sure. But what's happened is that two players, I think it was the semifinals, two players used androids. No, one player used an android, Dr. Gero, and the thing with Dr. Gero is he does not lose any ki if he super ascends or super descends. So you can just super ascend as super descend without losing any ki. So you can do it indefinitely. The problem is you literally can't approach someone who super ascends or super descends. So basically what this means is you cannot touch your enemy. I mean, this is such like a broken thing. And somehow I've seen people defend the tournament organizer. I mean, actually, no, I get the tournament organizers, right? I mean, like, it's a business move. You can't. Nobody wants to watch a player go up and down the whole time. You want to have content that you can actually monetize. So I get that decision, but I've seen people blame those players, even though like I mean, they played the game. They played the game the way it's designed. And there's a big difference between, because the game is designed like that. I'm sure some people are gonna think to themselves, well, it's not supposed to be played like that. Those are two different things. The game is designed to be played like that guy played in that tournament. And that's what I mean, the creative vision, so how the game is supposed to be played, that is not what the developers intended, right? So this is where my big issue comes in. I do believe we have some blame, we as a community. And that is the way we give critique to the game. I recently got a video recommended to me. I've not watched it, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, but that's kind of not important, because just to sort of demonstrate, it's a video by Lotus Asakura, a very famous gaming YouTuber. I mean, I like him. I like his videos, but the title was something along the lines of Sparking Zero is a casual game, and that's fine. I don't know about the points he makes in the video, but just taking that statement as a whole, like taking that title in a vacuum, I believe it really represents the issue we have when it comes to the discourse of the game. Viewing this whole problem through this competitive and like this competitive versus casual lens is the biggest mistake we have done when it comes to critiquing the game. Not only are those terms not pertinent to the discourse because they are very vague and undefined, they are also harmful to the future of the game because they obfuscate what the developers ought to do to improve the game. Now, to elaborate, why do I say that those terms are vague? Because you can't really give a definition of a competitive or casual game. I mean, answer me this question. I've never played CS:GO. I mean, I think I played it like once, twice. I don't know much about CS:GO, but if you would ask someone, hey, like, would you rather put CS:GO in the category of competitive games or casual games? Where would you put it? I think most people would put it in the competitive side of games, right? But what does that mean? Like, if I were to just boot up CS:GO now, I have no idea about the like mechanics, about the meta. Am I playing competitively? Am am I? And there's like a big distinction as well. Like, am I playing competitively, or am I playing a competitive game, or both, or one and then the other? I mean, like, so I'm playing a competitive game casually. Another big example would be the Smash Brothers franchise. For those who don't know, Smash Bros. Melee, which is the second installment of the franchise. I mean, I think everyone knows like the basic premise of Smash Bros. It's a fighting game featuring Nintendo characters. To summarize it, um, Melee was never supposed to be a competitive game. It was never supposed to be an Evo. That's not what HAL Laboratories intended when they developed the game. They wanted it to be fun, to be enjoyed like in a party setting. But do you know why the game is so why people who like want to play casual and people who like to play competitively like Melee? Not because it caters to either side, but because it's a good game with solid mechanics, but not because like it's a good competitive or good casual game. It's just a good game, period. And then that I think that goes for any game because at the end of the day, you can't define that. I think the best you can do is say that someone is a more competitive or someone is a more casual player. But casual games or competitive games, I would argue, don't exist. You can't really label games as such. Another example, I mean, I play a lot of Project M with my cousin, which for those who don't know, it's a mod for Super Smash Bros. Brawl, which is a game that came after Super Smash Bros. Melee, and which stripped away a lot of this competitive edge that Melee had. So like a lot of very high level mechanics, which were brought back, which were reinstated in that mod Project M. So to what level do me and my cousin have to get to in order to play competitively? Or are we already playing competitively because like competitively just comes from the word competition, which means to play or like to yeah to compete someone else, which I mean is what you do in any 1v1 game. I mean that by definition, it's such a non-term almost. So using it as a lens to describe the state of a game is harmful to the discourse. And a lot of the arguments I see on like, oh, the game should just be casual, are just justifications for the mechanics just not working. And to me, that's insane. I mean, you hear like you hear people saying like, oh well, I play with my buddies and like we just play honorably. We just want to have like we play to have fun. We don't use those extra. Okay, good on you. I mean, that doesn't make the obvious flaws just like magically disappear. And furthermore, you need quote unquote competitive players in any game because they can articulate what casual players feel but cannot articulate. All of those like flaws are listed before. Even people you would consider casual gamers in that sense are frustrated by them. So this idea that the more competitive, again, I hate using that word, but like I'm using it the way our community describes it. This idea that the more competitive you make the game, like the more you strip it away of its of its purpose, of its charm, is ludicrous. And for the record, I don't think making the game more competitive would make it achieve the vision that the developers have for it better. That's not my point. My point is that we as a community have to completely eject those terms. We have to completely remove that lens we see the game through. Like this whole casual versus competitive thing is completely counterproductive. And this is why I think we have made the mistake of even entertaining this whole discussion on, oh, not every game has to be balanced to be fun, as if that's actually the root of the issue, even though it's not at all. Because the BT3 was not balanced, absolutely not, but it was still fun. It was much more mechanically cohesive and well put together. That's why it worked, not because it was more balanced. And I'm using the term balanced the way it's been used in this whole discussion, not necessarily balanced in the strictest sense, but like balanced in this sort of, again, this whole competitive versus casual lens, which is basically what the word balanced has boiled down to during this whole discussion is more competitive. It's all like very circular, but that is what they basically mean by, oh, when you, not every game has to be balanced. They want to say, well, not every game has to be competitive. The devs of BT3 did not care about the game being casual or competitive because, like, as I said, first of all, that doesn't really work. Even I know the developers have said outright, I think, that they want to develop a casual game, but that just because they said that doesn't mean it makes any sense, because I don't think it does. Again, you can't really define a game as casual or competitive. The devs for BT3 were aware that a game's mechanics have to work, and they have to work with each other. That's like the most important part. Like it has to be there has to be a good interplay between the mechanics, which is just not present in Sparking Zero. So, in my opinion, we really completely lost the plot. We are not talking about the most important thing here anymore. We are not talking about getting this game to its full potential, to what the developers envisioned it to be. Like that, that's the most important part, and no one's talking about that. People are conflating that topic with the topic of competitive versus casual gaming for some reason. And even before the game released, this discussion already seemed very weird to me, and I think that's the only reason the developers even made that statement, because they themselves are like confused now as to what they want the game to be, which is like the worst thing. Like you have to have a direct vision for a game, otherwise, like, what do you have? And props to the developers, because they are very reactive, and they seem to take the criticism too hard. As I said, I don't like the game, but I think it's undeniable that the developers poured their heart and soul into this game. But the problem is, because we have misconstrued what we are supposed to be talking about in the first place, we have basically told the developers that this is an important issue, well, it's not an issue at all. And you don't have to agree with me that the game doesn't work. I mean, I think I could make a pretty strong case as to why it doesn't work, but um, I've never seen a game where like somehow so many people agree that there are a lot of flaws with the game, and then when you like watch reviews of it or read reviews of it, they like hand wave those issues away because it's a casual game and it's supposed to be enjoyed casually. As as I said, like that doesn't make the issues go away. And so we have now like unnecessarily completely obfuscated what we even want from the game as a whole and how we want the game to improve, because we made it so unnecessarily complex using this whole competitive versus casual frame of reference or like framework to critique the game. I mean, people are leaving this game. Like the Steam player base has dropped significantly, and like you see a lot of complaints online, and the criticisms I've mentioned before, you will hear often, and you will see in a lot of places, and and this is what I fear the most. I fear that the developers now are not focused on delivering the game to its full potential. I think they're so worried, especially after this whole tournament debacle, on catering too much to either side, more so the competitive side. They worry like that they're gonna make their game too competitive, which, as I've established, I mean, doesn't really make sense. It's not a frame of reference you can really use to design or critique a game. And the patches they will bring out will reflect that. I feel like they will try to, because they know the game has these issues, but now because of this whole nonsensical discourse we have online, they're gonna not focus on achieving their creative vision. They're gonna focus on catering, on pandering to this whole crowd of people that don't want the game to be too competitive, whatever the hell that means. And that is basically what I want to say. I think we failed as a community to really engage honestly with the game, and I think nostalgia has blinded us quite profusely. I don't think the game would be regarded as highly if first of all, if it were not a Budokai Tenkaichi game, um, which causes a lot of nostalgia to a lot of people, me included. And secondly, if it were not a Dragon Ball game, I feel like if this were like, I don't know, some random new IP with like um, newly created characters just for this game, I don't think I would see any review above a 5 anywhere. Um, so this is also like a small thing. I feel like people are too afraid to like accept critique and therefore also dish out critique to the game because um, they're like, oh well, people are having fun. People like the IP of Dragon Ball. People like having just like casual matches, even though that just prevents you from actually helping the developers achieve what they want to achieve with the game. So in conclusion, I think we have to eject those terms of competitive and casual and all the connotations they have from the online discourse, and we have to actually focus on how we can give feedback that is actually constructive to the game, to the developers, and not focus on this whole emotion-based, nostalgia-based drivel that we are focusing on right now. It's I feel like if we do not do that, the game will die within like 2 or 3 years, depending on like um, how much DLC they dish out. Because if, for example, like there were no more patches and no more DLC coming out starting tomorrow, I think the game would be virtually dead within a year. The state the game is in right now, it could not survive. Um, and with that, I mean being relatively relevant for more than a year. I think a year is like already a very optimistic estimate, and that can also only be attributed, in my opinion, to the fact that this is a Budokai Tenkaichi game and a Dragon Ball game, but not because it is a good game. Anyway, that's all I want to say.